Good morning, dear students. Welcome to P.N.AMERSEY e-learning classes.
So, our next topic is habitat and adaptation. What is habitat? The place where animals live is called habitat. Habitat means a dwelling place. A habitat provides food, water, air, light, shelter, and a place for breeding to the plants and animals living in it. For example, the cactus plant grows and survives well in hot and dry areas of deserts, so the habitat of the cactus plant is the desert. The camel is adapted to survive on very little water for a long periods of time, so the habitat of a camel is also the desert. And what is adaptation? The presence of specific features in the body which help a plant and animal to live or survive is called adaptation. Adaptations may be in the form of modifications in shape, body organs, color, and size. For example, the lotus plant is well suited to aquatic habitat, and a camel is well adjusted to live in desert conditions. Now, there are two components of a habitat: biotic components and abiotic components. In biotic components, the living components of a habitat are examples plants, animals, and other microorganisms. And non-living components of abiotic components are air, water, soil, sunlight, temperature, and rocks. Then the types of adaptations. First one, terrestrial adaptation. In that there are three types: desert adaptation, mountain adaptation, and grassland adaptation. Second type of adaptation is aquatic adaptation. What do you find from the plants and animals listed in the activity 1? Did you find a large variety in them? Look at what you have entered in the column for the desert and the column for the sea in table 9.1. Did you list very different kind of organisms in these two columns? What are the surroundings like in these two regions? In the sea, plants and animals are surrounded by saline salty water. Most of them use the air dissolved in water. There is a very little water available in the desert. It is very hot in the daytime and very cold at night in the desert. The animals and plants of the desert live on the soil, desert, and breathe air from the surroundings. The sea and the desert are very different surroundings, and we find very different kinds of plants and animals in these two regions, isn't it? Let us look at two very different kinds of organisms from the desert and the sea: a camel and a fish. The body structure of a camel helps to survive in the desert conditions. Camels have long legs which help to keep their bodies away from the heat of the sand. You can see figure 9.2. They excrete small amount of urine, their dung is dry, and they do not sweat. Since camels lose very little water from their bodies, they can live for many days without water. Let us look at different kinds of fish. Some of these are shown in figure 9.3. There are so many kinds of fish, but do you see that they all have something common about their shape? All the ones shown here have the streamlined shape that was discussed in chapter 8. This shape helps them to move inside the water. Fish have slippery scales on their bodies. These scales protect the fish and also helps in easy movement through water. We discussed in chapter 8 that fish have flat fins and tails that help them to change directions and keep their body balanced in water. Gills present in the fish help them to use oxygen dissolved in water. We see that the features of a fish help it to live inside water and features of a camel help it to survive in desert. We have taken only two examples from a very wide variety of animals and plants that live on the earth. In all this variety of organisms, we will find that they have certain features that help them to live in the surroundings in which they are normally found. The presence of specific features or certain habits which enable an organism to live naturally in a place is called as adaptation. Adaptation of organisms differ depending on their place of dwelling. Dwelling of place means their home. That is why a fish cannot live out of water and a camel cannot live in sea.
Thank you, dear students.